So, Creative Sask is what is most aligned with supporting the creative tech sector. As that creative umbrella organization, it recognizes creative tech is one of the sectors it directly deals with. So Creative Saskatchewan is the biggest part of this picture, getting it aligned correctly with the needs of creative tech will solve a lot of problems. So it's important we really understand Creative Saskatchewan. So to understand Creative Saskatchewan, we can look at how it did it start. So it was founded in 2013 through a government act. It is enshrined in law in Saskatchewan that allowed it to become a crown corporation. It largely happened out of a discussion paper created by SaskMusic called the Creative Saskatchewan Inc., a response to moving Saskatchewan's creative industries forward, building a long-term strategy. So it really identified the need for Creative Saskatchewan, and it provided an awful lot of guidance on its structure and its purpose. So it basically gives the purpose for founding it as to support the creative industries in Saskatchewan, to maintain the public ownership of the soundstage in Regina, to provide missing services in the existing cultural industry associations, so those 7 organizations, Sask Books, Sask Interactive, SaskMusic, Sympia, etc. And most importantly to me, to focus on promotion and marketing to enhance our cultural products' success. So that to me is really what makes this the most important factor for needing Creative Saskatchewan. And you'll see in the next few slides more details about that. So from that discussion paper, they give a definition for the creative industries that really, I think, helps understand the situation, or what exactly we're talking about. All creative industries stem from the commercialization of creative expression, with creative work as their central input and the starting point for a large industry of supports and services. They include the businesses and people involved in the creation, production, distribution, and marketing of cultural goods and services that have aesthetic, intellectual, and emotional appeal to the customer and value in the marketplace. So this is a fantastic definition. I love this definition, and really it needs to be really core to thinking about Creative Saskatchewan. What the purpose of Creative Saskatchewan needs to be is, of course, to help the creation and marketing of cultural goods. Now, this is the first time we've seen the phrase cultural goods. I've hinted about it, but a cultural good is a product built from your culture. It has an artistic aspect, or in this case, it has a aesthetic, intellectual, and emotional appeal. But it's something that you can produce and sell to the world, and that's really the key here. Is you are producing something that can go out into the world and share your culture. It can build your culture. So when you think about Hollywood builds cultural products in the form of movies that then get spread out throughout the world, and people understand Hollywood's culture. They understand America's culture because those products can succeed out there in the market. They can produce them, they can distribute them, export them, and by doing so, they don't just make money, but they also spread their culture. And that, in turn, doesn't just get you the money, but it allows people to associate a culture with you that they will come back to experience more of. And that's the real power of culture here, is that it's creating this association and demand for your product and your thoughts, really, your artistic visions and values and beliefs. And that's what's so powerful about this. So again, quoting from that piece, for the commercial music industry as represented by SaskMusic, the most significant aspect of the above definition is value in the marketplace. It is that statement that separates works solely of artistic merit from cultural products. There are many beautiful pieces with tremendous artistic merit that have no or little value in the commercial marketplace. Conversely, there are pieces or works that those with experience may consider artistically substandard, but which the general public finds attractive and thus valuable. The vast majority of products share both artistic merit and value in the marketplace. So again, this explains a bit more about that cultural product. There are lots of cultural products that don't necessarily become commercially successful or have that purpose in mind necessarily. You know, when you think about maybe folk dancing, for example, it has tremendous cultural meaning behind it, but very rarely does folk dancing have commercial success. You know, it's not done as a commercial product or pursuit. You don't dance folk dances for money so much. You know, I mean, you can, but it's not a thriving commercial industry, shall we say. Whereas, you know, the catchiest schlock pop is very commercially successful. It may not have enormous artistic cultural value in terms of the depth of meaning, but it does create draw, it does create commercial success, and in doing so, the more it spreads, the more association and awareness, if not demand, people have of that culture. You know, what exactly the world gets out of catchy pop in terms of cultural hegemonies and you know, the change of societies. There's a lot to think about and discuss there, but we won't get into that. But the key is we're talking about products with both artistic and commercial value. And that's really the crux here at Creative Saskatchewan. Everything they do is fundamentally about both of those things. It has to have artistic value, or it is not a creative thing. But what Creative Saskatchewan focuses on is the commercial side of things, because the Arts Board already deals with the non-commercial side of things. Now, it's important that both of those are there. If it's not an artistic product, then it's just a tech product. It's a business product, and there are other organizations and mandates to deal with pure commercial development. There's the Sask Arts Boards for the pure artistic development. Creative Sask is only when both of those are met. There is artistic and commercial purpose to this work. So, the Government of Saskatchewan, through the Saskatchewan Arts Board, has traditionally provided support for the creation and production of works of art. Although that support has been successful in producing works of the highest quality, their value in the marketplace has sometimes been missing, if not ignored. It is the market value that will contribute to and increase the positive economic impact of these cultural products for our province. SaskMusic strongly believes in and supports the creation of quality product through the SAB or alternative forms of support for the creative process, as our artists cannot sell things that do not exist. We also believe, however, that the marketing of our products has not been the focus of concentrated support and effort, with a consequent lack of economic growth. So this is really why this discussion paper happened, was pointing out that lack of support for marketing our products so they can commercially succeed. That was what's missing. When they started this discussion paper that led to the creation of Creative Saskatchewan, that was the desperate need. The marketing of our cultural products so that they could commercially succeed. So marketing is the major sticking point and purpose of Creative Saskatchewan. That is absolutely ingrained into the DNA. It is the purpose this organization was born for. So again, this mandate for Creative Saskatchewan is from the discussion paper, not the current mandate. This is what they envisioned for the mandate of Creative Saskatchewan. The mandate for CSI, Creative Saskatchewan Incorporated, can be stated very succinctly as the development and marketing of cultural products produced within the province of Saskatchewan. Beautifully succinct. When you compare that to the vision and mission statements you get, that is so beautifully succinct. The development and marketing of cultural products. We're done. Perfect. As the entire purpose of CSI is to assist artists in making a reasonable living and thus contributing further to the economic activity in our province, those artists would be the best source of raw information and data to accomplish just that. So here we see a second really important thing to remember about Creative Saskatchewan. In its creation, the vision to create it, it recognizes the importance of the grassroots, of the individuals serving to inform its policies and procedures. So both of those points are wonderfully important, beautifully said. Creative Sask needs to aid production, it needs to aid marketing, its focuses on cultural products, those that have artistic merit and contribute to culture, and that artists must inform its policies. So again, from that same discussion paper, the second and perhaps more significant point is that to lose the cultural industry associations, CIAs, would be to eliminate the most direct source of contact and information about the respective industries. No one knows better what is current, what is changing, what is no longer relevant, what the consumer wants, what Apple or Amazon is about to announce, than the artists themselves and the grassroots organizations that represent them. To eliminate those organizations by incorporating their programs into the mandate of CSI would be to lose not only the best, but often the only source of current market information that will be required by CSI if it is to succeed. So again, here we see that foundational document recognizing the importance of industry feedback and knowledge, that the individual creators in that field are the best and most important voice for what CSI should do and how it should do it. So here we see, the importance that when SaskMusic pushed for Creative Sask, it wasn't saying Creative Sask should amalgamate all of those different divisions, that it shouldn't mean SMPIA and SaskMusic all just get smushed into the same organization. It's this organization works to work with organizations that connect directly in with those industry associations, and so can help be guided through the industry itself, through even individuals themselves, to ensure that Creative Saskatchewan is doing the right thing and helping those industries and creators in the most effective way. And so, with that, we end up with the Creative Saskatchewan Act. So this is an act of law through the Saskatchewan legislature that created Creative Saskatchewan as a Crown corporation. So that lovely mix of letters and numbers, 2013 CC 43.12 S3 is the act, in legal terminology, that created Creative Saskatchewan, thankfully more human-readably known as the Creative Saskatchewan Act. So in it, we've got the direct wording here from the Act itself. Purposes 4. The purposes of the agency are the following. A. To facilitate the expansion of a business environment advantageous to the growth of the creative industry and to the growth of new employment, investment, and production opportunities in Saskatchewan within the creative industry. Bang on. B. To encourage and support innovation, invention, and excellence in the creative industry by stimulating creative production, format innovation, and new models of collaboration among sectors of the creative industry. So here it's saying that not only is it helping to directly, create stuff, make things happen, but it's also there to help collaboration across sectors, which is, I think, really important when you're particularly coming from multimedia, interactive digital. Geez, we're going to need some musicians to do music, so, collaboration, this is fantastic, particularly for creative tech. C. To assist in the promotion and marketing of Saskatchewan's creative industry and its respective products. So again, here we focus on that promoting and marketing the products, and that's so vitally important. Discoverability is the biggest battle any artist and creator faces in the digital era. Can you be found? Can you connect with your potential market in order to get any kind of sale? Marketing and promotion is key to success, and there's nothing more important you could help an artist with than promotion and marketing. No matter what we produce, if it doesn't get the right promotion and marketing, it can't succeed. So C is so absolutely vital to this. And D, to administer financial assistance and other programs and initiatives that may be assigned to it by an act or by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. Now, the importance here, again, financial assistance. It's expected that Creative Saskatchewan would provide financial assistance to the creative industry, that it would be providing grants to help grow that industry, that it would provide money to help with promotion and marketing. And so financial assistance is fundamentally a part of this. Literally in law, it says you guys are going to be giving out money. Pretty important note. So continuing the act, those were only the first half here. So point E, to facilitate the gathering and analysis of information, research, and technological development in the creative industry. So it's supposed to provide essentially, information to help our creative industry be its best. F, to increase recognition of the creative industry as a vital element of Saskatchewan's economy and cultural identity. So it's also helping to raise the profile of the entire sector, not just of products and individual companies or individual artists, but to raise the profile of the entirety of the industry, both internal to Saskatchewan and external. G, to enable cooperation among persons and entities within the creative industry and between the public and private sectors to encourage development in the creative industry. So again, bringing everybody together to help make things happen. This could mean helping find investors, for example, or helping people find their way into creative careers. Those are just two examples. H, to undertake any other activities or functions assigned by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. So basically just open-ended, we can tell you what to do beyond that. But all 7 of those other points are fundamental and, you know, inescapable. It just might also end up doing something else. So that's the law. That's literally the law in Saskatchewan. Creative Sask exists and it does those things. So to recap, Creative Sask aids the environment to grow the creative industry. It stimulates creative production and collaboration among the industry. It assists in marketing the industry and its products. It administers financial assistance. It gathers and analyzes information. It works to increase the recognition of the industry, and it works to enable cooperation. So those are the 7 fundamental tasks that Creative Saskatchewan is supposed to pursue, must pursue. Now, one thing I noticed while, again, reading through the Act here, Annual Report 231, the agency in each fiscal year, in accordance with Section 13 of the Executive Government Administration Act, shall submit to the Minister a report on the business of the agency for the preceding fiscal year and a general plan for the following fiscal year, and B, a financial statement showing the business of the agency for the preceding fiscal year in any form that may be required by Treasury Board. So those are standard government procedures. You know, you have to, as a Crown Corporation, you provide a report to the government to state what the heck happened. Now, the important thing here is a general plan for the following fiscal year. So you're not supposed to just report what happened, but you're also actually supposed to project forward what your plans are for the next year so that the government can actually make some kind of plans to understand what you're doing, to allow for it, to budget for it, what needs to happen so that it can, you know, plan for that. Now, the important thing is that's not just a government thing, but that's a government transparency thing so that the public can also have some idea of what the government is going to be doing, what these agencies are looking and planning to do in the future, so that, you know, we can plan our lives and our businesses around those ideas. So the unfortunate thing is, in the 2019-2020 Creative Saskatchewan Annual Report, it didn't include any kind of general plan for the following fiscal year. It provides no information about what is going forward. It had a lot of information about what it had done, but it provided nothing about going forward. So admittedly, in 2020, whatever the plan was probably wouldn't have worked. That it's been a rough year. So not likely to have succeeded, but the point is, it isn't so much, you know, it's not written in stone. It's a guide to try and help people understand where you're going. Now, why we really want that and why I would like to see that in the next annual report and all those going forward, not just because it's literally enacted in law here, but because it helps us understand what the heck's going on. So, you know, when you have an organization like this and you have all those different programs that it does, you know, what's up for renewal? What's up for review? What are you changing? Is that going to just go forward status quo, or is that going to go for review? Should we prepare to provide information to adjust things? Are they happy with the current situation? Are they happy with current outcomes? If they aren't, you know, what needs does it have? What changes need to happen? Does it want to push in a certain direction? Does program A have enough success but program B not enough, and they really want to focus on B? Do they need more people applying? Have they maxed out? What's going on? It's just, this is a way for industry and the public to understand the situation better, to make plans for it and to engage with the organization better. So it's how can we plan out what we need to do? How can we expect Creative Saskatchewan to be operating as a partner and a support for us? Are they looking at building a new marketing wing? Who knows? That would be fantastic. Let me in on that. Make plans based on that. We need some kind of idea of the vision going forward for an agency like this, not just for the creative tech sector, but all the creative sector really do need to be provided some kind of guidance. Whether it meets the reality of a year like 2020 or not, the thought counts, giving us something to go on. So, the most important thing to creative tech is the cultural industry association responsible for creative tech through Creative Saskatchewan. Sask Interactive is the agency responsible for interactive digital media or creative tech, whatever term you prefer. It'll depend on your jurisdiction. But that's the agency tasked with representing or monitoring or whatever you want to say, dealing with that subsector of the creative industries. Sask Interactive gets 100% of its operational funding from Creative Saskatchewan. That's really important to recognize and understand because it is being paid to do a job. 100% of its operation is funded by Creative Saskatchewan to serve that purpose. So it should be putting 100% of its operations towards fulfilling that exact service. It should be supporting the creative industries. It should be supporting Creative Saskatchewan. That is its fundamental purpose. It's paid by CS, Creative Saskatchewan, to help fulfill Creative Saskatchewan's mandate. Saskatchewan Interactive's mandate is then a subset of Creative Saskatchewan's mandate because, again, 100% of its operational funding is from Creative Saskatchewan. It does what it's paid to do. You can think of it like Sask Interactive is the employee of Creative Saskatchewan. It gets paid to do a very certain thing. It should probably do it. The problem is that Sask Interactive hasn't been. It has not been focused on creative tech. It has been widely swerving and grabbing whatever easy fruit it can, covering the entire tech sector. They've taken, the idea of interactive somehow got lodged in the organization's brain that it just deals with tech. That is not true. Not all tech is creative tech. Creative tech is a very specific thing, and it really needs to focus on that because, again, remember, everything it does should be a subset of Creative Saskatchewan's mandate, and Creative Saskatchewan's mandate is 100% creative. That's its purpose. So Sask Interactive should be only dealing with creative tech. It's only when it's both. That's what it's dealing with. It's been spending too much of its time focused on any kind of tech it could do. It goes to every tech event and, dusts its hands, says it's doing great things. Well, guess what? There are other people whose mandate it is to deal with tech, the entire tech sector. You've got Innovation Saskatchewan with its $25 million budget. You've got Innovation Place with its $40 million budget. Sask Interactive with its $200,000 budget cannot do the job of Innovation Place and Innovation Saskatchewan combined. it needs to just focus on creative tech. That's what it's paid for. That's what it should be doing. It is not. There needs to be some major change here. Now, you might be wondering then, if its focus is creative tech, how do you define creative tech? Well, the important thing here is, what is creative? The easiest thing is a common legal phrase, unique artistic expression. So this is a clause used in copyright law, in the Berne Convention, to define, an artistic work. Creative, we've seen previous slides, we've seen a number of things mentioned, it has artistic inputs. There is aesthetic, emotional, intellectual aspects to the work that create a cultural product. It's important that we recognize creative means artistic and cultural. And what that means is its primary function is not business. It's not a purely technical, functional thing. It's creative. It has to have that artistic expression. There has to be a fundamental tie-in to artistic expression and culture to it. An unusual one is that also means it's not education. Now, this one's a little more blurry, but an important thing to recognize is education is fundamentally about representing facts and technical matters. Stating the history of something, stating the logic of something. Education isn't fundamentally an artistic interpretation. That's generally what you're trying to avoid with education. You don't want to give an artistic interpretation of math. You want to give the math. So education, there is a role for art within education, obviously, but as a core purpose, you really need to be careful about calling an educational product a creative, cultural product, artistic product. So when you see an educational focus, that's a red flag saying you really need to think hard about whether this actually qualifies as a creative product, as a cultural product. It also importantly would not mean primarily a work-for-hire product. So where the direction and purpose of the piece is determined by a client. That would mean that your artistic integrity is, of course, being offloaded onto another person. If they're out of Saskatchewan, of course, you can't claim that that's a Saskatchewan creation if someone else is directing the artistic meaning of it. Now, the other important aspect of work for hire is when you're hired to do something, the person that's paying actually owns the copyright. They own the intellectual property behind it. So that's why, when you go to work to your boss and you do something for your boss, the boss's company, the company owns that, right? It's not your own individual product when you did it for someone else. So again, work for hire really, again, raises those red flags. Does this fit? Because if its IP is owned by the customer, if it's not a fundamentally Saskatchewan created product at that point, then you would have to worry about, is this something that Creative Saskatchewan, Sask Interactive, SaskMusic, whoever would support? There's definitely some major questions about qualification on that because of work for hire. Now, that said, there does need to be flexibility in these definitions. It's not just that within those products there needs to be flexibility about what counts or not, but you also have to recognize that there is the larger purpose. There's supporting the given products. There's also the supporting the artist and the industry. So sometimes you need to make something that as a product doesn't really fit, but you want to be able to support the business or creators as a development of their skill and market recognition and whatnot. So you can look at it through strengthening the product, you can look at it through strengthening the individuals, you can look at it as strengthening the business. So there are different ways that those things can be looked at, different perspectives, different targets, different strategies, but these fundamentals, do need to be asked. Now, for further clarity, we can actually look back at the Creative Saskatchewan Act, and it gives some definitions to work on, or interpretation in legalese. So here we see the creative industry. The creative industry means the industry, the main businesses of which are either or both of the following. 1, the development, production, distribution, marketing, sale, or exhibition of commercial cultural content, including music and sound recording, film and television, interactive digital media, visual arts and crafts, writing and book publishing, and live performing arts. And 2, the creation of intellectual property or the manufacture or export of artistic or cultural products for commercial purposes, including new or hybrid cultural works or products. So again, here we really wanted to remind people artistic or cultural products for commercial purposes. So again, it needs to be both of those things. An artistic product that is also a commercial product. So when we look at what should be supported through Sask Interactive particularly, we can look at 7 questions. Focus should be on products that are 1, Saskatchewan owned. So 50% of the company ownership plus 1 is by Saskatchewan citizens. So that could vary, but this is majority, is 1 share more than 50%, right? Then it is majority owned in Saskatchewan. That number could change, but our focus is on Saskatchewan. We do need to recognize the Saskatchewan component there. 2, it's a product rather than a service. Now, why I say that's important is because of the scalability of success. A service generally means having to directly respond and service a contract. It's only what you are actively doing. That's an enormous limitation when you compare it to a product. A product can be manufactured in the digital space that's instantaneous and free. A product gets made and can go out into the world and be sold and be experienced without any cost to you to make that happen. Whereas a service is something you're actively doing. So a product can essentially exponentially greater serve the purpose of spreading our culture than a service. A service directly ties you to doing something, which is a very costly way in terms of time and human resources to achieve a purpose, whereas a product gets made and exists and does what it does without you even knowing that it's doing it. And so it can act exponentially greater, and it can exist beyond your business or artistic function. So even if you go out of business, if your product's still out there, it's still doing stuff, even if you've moved on. Whereas a service, immediately ends once you stop doing that service. So a product is vastly more powerful in terms of building our culture and economy through cultural product. So to me, product would be an important distinction there. 3, commercial. It has to be a commercial purpose. It has to be for commercial purpose, because if it's not for commercial purpose, it could go to the Arts Board. And again, the Arts Board has a $9 million budget instead of a $200,000 budget. So you push whatever you can outside of your mandate, right? Commercial has been fundamentally declared as a key purpose to Creative Saskatchewan. It has to be artistic plus commercial. So if it ain't commercial, it ain't Sask Interactive. 4, it is a consumer product. So it is for individuals or families to consume. It is a cultural product. So the target is to people. It is not a business service. That is not a cultural interaction, you know. So it focuses on the individual, for families, for individuals, whatever it is. It's a consumer product. Cultural. This probably should have been higher on the list, but again, we're touching back on that. It has to have artistic purpose. Now, specific to Sask Interactive, you know, very specifically to them, it has to be, shockingly enough, interactive. So it should have a reactive component. So with games, of course, that's easy, right? You press a button and the computer does something in response. With a website, you click a button, there you go, it does something in response. Interactive is a fundamental part of the mission. That is, you know, the subsector of the creative fields. That's what Sask Interactive is there for, hence the name. So is it interactive? Now, important to recognize, interactive does not necessarily mean digital. So it could be a, you know, there are physical games and whatnot, and products and, you know, switches and, you know, whack-a-mole. We probably don't need a huge amount of whack-a-mole assistance. So we want to focus on basically computer products, digital products for the modern era. And so that is, of course, our last point here. It should be a digital product. It is comprised of digital data and or programming. So if something matches all 7 of those factors, congratulations, it's a creative tech product. It is a cultural product. It is a creative product. It is right. It is exactly what the mandate is. So those are the 7 questions that really need to be asked in order to target things correctly. Now, of course, that's just for a product. Again, we want to recognize that the mandate covers not just supporting the products, but also supporting the creators and the companies involved in creating such products. So again, there can be instances where funding would be directed specifically to people or to companies rather than a given product in order to build that whole ecosystem. Now, one important thing I wanted to talk about is representation. So the role of a cultural industry association, often people will think, you know, one of the words that will immediately come to mind is representation. Now, why this is a tricky issue, we're going to explore in the next 2 slides here. So what I wanted to do is look at a comparative example from outside of the creative sector. So here I'm mentioning Sask Tech, which was one of the organizations mentioned before. It's a independent, grassroots-run lobbying organization for the tech industry in Saskatchewan. It's industry-run, it's industry-controlled, and its job is to represent tech in Saskatchewan. It's founded, organized, and run entirely by private businesses and individuals in the tech sector. It receives 0 government funding. It has zero government control, and it can therefore represent the sector and is regularly consulted by the government for feedback and guidance on tech policy. There are lots of meetings between Sask Tech and the government agencies in order to properly, inform its policies and ideas and hear back from industry what's working, what isn't, what do you need. This is normal, this is helpful, and Sask Tech has done a lot of really good things in terms of coalescing the industry to get it better recognized, to help support it, to align government policies, to get more media for the tech sector, and lots of wonderful good things. Sask Tech is a real success story in Saskatchewan, so that's why I wanted to use it here. It's a great example of success. Now, when we talk about representation, if we're trying to apply that to a cultural industry association run under Sask Culture, not Sask Culture, Creative Sask, we have to ask some hard questions here. Sask Interactive is a government organization. 100% of its operational funding is by the government through Creative Saskatchewan. It has a citizen board, but its mandate and funding are both controlled by the government, not industry. It may or may not have industry representation on either the board or the staff. Is currently expected to represent and advocate for the industry, though. So Creative Sask actually expects it to represent and advocate for the industry, and so far Creative Sask only goes to Sask Interactive for that. They've not consulted outside of Sask Interactive, and they have not pursued direct connections with the individuals and the companies involved in the creative sector, creative tech sector. So if Sask Interactive is government controlled, can it dissent? Can it criticize the government? Can it push the government? When you have an organization that is so fundamentally controlled by government, it's government, it's not the industry. It's not the citizens. So Sask Interactive is fundamentally, through its existence, through the structure that it has, it can't be a representative organization. It fails on any ethical and moral ground to be a representative for the industry because it is government. So it's really important to recognize that Sask Interactive, it's not a representative organization. It's there to support a sector, but it can't represent it in true democratic fashion. Now, some other important notes about Sask Interactive. It does not provide development grants. This gets confused a lot because, there are the industry associations under Creative Sask that you would generally associate with those given things. SaskMusic, you'd think the music grants come through SaskMusic because it's music. All grants in the creative sector come through Creative Saskatchewan. They built a system so only it has to deal with all of the accounting, transparency, financial issues in handling all of the grants for whatever subsector of the creative industry. And a number of grants are multi-sector, so when it comes to, asking for a grant to support your marketing, it doesn't really matter what subsector you're a part of. It's, oh, you need money for marketing. Okay, fine. So Creative Sask handles all of the grants and funding and financial assistance, which we know is part of the act of law that creates Creative Saskatchewan. So Sask Interactive does not provide grants, but it is there to help inform their structure and inform the processes that create those grants. So it's there to help Creative Saskatchewan understand what the interactive digital media sector needs in terms of grants. Now, for Sask Interactive's specific tasks, programs, sponsorships, activities, programs, it does provide programming and event funding, but so far, over the past 3 years, every time that I've asked, it said that there's a $500 limit. So you could apply to get funding through Sask Interactive to do something for the creative tech sector, but your limit is $500. So I am one of the co-organizers for the Global Game Jam Regina site, which is a three-day event bringing together, 100 people to create games. It's the largest tech event in Saskatchewan in terms of enrollment. Running for 3 days, an event, needing a facility, needing all of the accoutrement that you require, to seat people, to provide them internet access, power, chairs and tables. We provide beverages and food. We actually feed people 3 meals. That's for 100 people. It may surprise you, but you can't feed people 3 meals and entertain them, or foster them for 3 days on $500. That budget doesn't work. So if we want events like the Global Game Jam Regina to succeed and exist, $500 doesn't do it. And if the organization whose fundamental mission is to support those things isn't willing or able to fund them in a reasonable amount, those things aren't going to happen. So the $500 event limit really needs to change over there, because we can't do what we need under those terms. So that's one of the many things Sask Interactive needs to re-examine. There's plenty of reasons you need financial oversight. You don't want them just be able to hand out any amount of money. So that's generally why there are cash limits on programs, is because beyond that limit you'd need board approval or something. But if that needs board approval, then get the board involved to approve it, because you need the largest event in the province to actually be able to succeed and continue. It's a good thing. We need good things. So we need to really adjust and look at those policies and re-examine them to make sure that good things are going to be able to happen. Now, Sask Interactive used to have a large programming budget, so things they could use money for to make events and workshops and cool things happen. At one point, I know it was $90,000 a year was what the CEO told me. At one point they had funding for. But the problem is its programming has been, or its programming budget, so it gets an operational budget and then a programming budget. So operational budget pays for salaries and facilities. Programming budget just goes to specific programs to run workshops and events. The problem is that programming funding has been reduced to nothing. On its most recent audit, it was reduced to negative $18,000. So it didn't just get no money, it had to pay back Creative Saskatchewan for not having spent money in the previous year. So, an example, in 2019, it got $58,000 to do stuff, to help the community, to help the industry make things happen. But it only spent $17,000 on projects and workshops. So it had $58,000 it could spend freely, but it only spent 17. It just ignored $41,000. It could have funded things like the Global Game Jam. It had money to do it. It had $41,000 it could have injected into the industry, but it didn't. In 2020, it had to repay $18,000 because it hasn't spent its money. It doesn't know what to do. It can't run these events itself. And when an outside partner comes in, like the Global Game Jam, it tells them it can't give them money. This is horribly dysfunctional. So it had money, it had the opportunity to make a difference, and it didn't. And so that ability to make a difference has been taken away from it because it wasn't responsible with it. That's where we're left.